I'm probably going to talk at this level because I'm holding a baby. And so I've now started talking in this sort of meditative voice, like the Calm app.
You should market that.
I should. Talking at the level that doesn't upset a baby, which also doesn't upset a human.
People with misophonia would get quite upset.
With what?
With misophonia.
What's misophonia?
It's upset by like little noises. So like particularly like mouth noises or eating noises.
I see. Isn't that just bad manners?
You can't help making some noise when you eat, Pippa.
But how?
At your household, it drummed into you. Complete noise cancellation whilst eating.
But how? But I'm sure you can only be annoyed by quite large eating noises.
If you have misophonia, then
right.
you're annoyed by like those really little noises.
So even like just a...
And with this cold open, we've just lost 100 regular listeners with misophonia who just unsubscribed.
Hello, Andrew.
Hello, Pippa. I'm in the same room as you for once.
I know, you're never in the same room as me.
I know.
Not because of dislikes.
I mean, partly, obviously.
Partly.
That's a factor, but shall we say not the main
It's not the
catalyst.
main reason. Mainly it's because we're at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, where but I live here.
You live at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival all year round.
I'm just in that bubble all year round, charging entry fees. But you're here doing Showstopper, and I'm not.
That's right. Welcome, by the way, to the Showstopper podcast.
Yes, the Showstopper podcast. What is it?
It's our monthly chat with guests from the world of musical theatre, comedy and improv, where we have a lovely little chat and then make up a song with them.
It's a very nice podcast, I think.
I'm glad you're a fan.
I'm a big fan.
Great.
I've liked it and I've subscribed to it on pretty much all of the channels available.
Wow.
How's the festival going?
I mean, beautiful. We're having a lovely time. We've made lots of shows up, including a French wrestling one called The Eiffel Power.
Very good.
A sort of gang story set in Birmingham kebab shop. Can you guess what it was called, Pippa?
Oh my God, kebabulous.
Think more like classic TV Birmingham gangs.
Oh, Peaky.
Yes.
Peaky.
And then a kebab pun would be...
Peaky Donna.
Peaky Donna. It was called Greasy Blinders, but
okay.
But I think Peaky Donna was better, really.
Well, I've been reading all of the synopses on Twitter, which you can. Well, everyone could go and read them if you want at the Showstoppers. And the one that looked great was the one set in a Barnsley Youth Choir?
Yes, called Spirited Away.
That sounded lovely.
In which our esteemed colleague Jonathan Ainscoe just played his real life self conducting a youth choir in the north of England.
Was it full of heart?
It was full of heart. The audience was also full of, shout out to the Barnsley Youth Choir.
Oh, really?
Who, there must have been about 100 of them in.
Wow.
So when they suggested that setting, it was very clear that was what was going to happen.
Oh my goodness, did you set a chorus and then get them to sing it?
If only you'd been there, Pippa.
That's why I would. That's the Pippa magic that's missing.
Absolutely. The other magic missing from the festival, Pippa, the dreaded bin strikes.
Yeah, the bin strikes, which of course I knew about as a local resident.
Yeah.
But it was really funny on Twitter because everyone was going, "The city centre's looking terrible," and then local people were starting to go, "Actually, it's a bin strike." So yes, the city centre's looking awful.
I would say it's now gone beyond awful into fully apocalypse mode.
Really, yeah. Really makes you realise how valuable the refuse workers are. So if you're listening, Edinburgh Council, I'm pretty sure they're
Give them some money.
A Showstopper podcast fan.
Yeah.
Pay them properly. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So that's our political bit over.
Well, now we'll sing a political song.
Talking about politics, who's our guest this week?
None other than the amazing Josie Lawrence.
Josie Lawrence. Anyone who's listened to myself or Ruth or probably any of the women in Showstopper Talk will know that she is sort of the reason why most of us ever thought we could do something like this, because she, of course, came to great fame as the lady that made up amazing songs on Whose Lines It Anyway?
Absolutely. Josie was known as the one who was also like the proper actor and would, go and do stuff at the National and, was in Much Ado About Nothing and big musicals and everything. And she was this amazing bridge, I thought, between like comedy and acting and music.
You do tend to get put in a box of, well, you do stand-up comedy, so there's no way you could also do a serious thing.
Yeah.
So she really made everyone go, oh, actually, she sort of started off doing the serious stuff, found her way onto this show, and then went back to it.
And these days you work with Josie Lawrence.
Yeah, absolutely. Do the Comedy Store Players with her. Ruth and I are in a group called the Glenda J Collective with her and Carrie Lloyd. 15-year-old me just loses her mind every time she gets to say, hi, Josie, you want to come over and play?
So we recorded this several months ago now, Pippa.
Months and months ago. I was maybe 6 months pregnant, something like that.
Yeah.
And now there's a human on me.
She's not moved that far since that recording, to be fair. Like, she's moved like 6 inches.
She's moved outside.
Al fresco now.
That's right, al fresco, baby. We were at Tall Story Studios.
That's right. Duncan Walsh Atkins was on keys.
And maybe we should say at this point that if you listen to the last episode of the Showstopper podcast with Mr. Alan Cox, we accidentally mislabeled the pianist as Duncan Walsh Atkins when it wasn't Duncan Walsh Atkins. It was Mr. Christopher Ashe playing the piano. So so we just wanted to give a shout out to Christopher Ashe there.
Although if you listen to the episode now, it has been fixed, so it will say Christopher Ashe. But if you listen to it in the window before it got fixed, then you will have been misinformed.
That's right. So if there's ever a pub quiz about the content of Showstopper podcasts, you can say that episode... What's the number of that episode?
Season 3, episode, I'm going to say 10.
10. Season 3, episode 10 originally stated that the pianist was Duncan Walsh Atkins, but in fact was Christopher Ashe.
Yeah, that's right. I think Philip Pellew might run a Showstopper podcast quiz.
Oh, yes. That would be amazing. Philip Pellew has made many a Showstopper quiz. One Christmas, I believe we all ended up shouting, can this quiz end now?
No, Philip, can we modify that? You ended up shouting, can this quiz end now?
It was about 4 hours long.
Pippa got very angry at how long Phil's quiz was.
It was so long. And everyone just wanted to go.
Shall we have a listen to that conversation with you, me, and Josie Lawrence?
Yes, let's do that now.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Josie Lawrence.
Hello.
We are very excited that you're here.
So you should be.
Well, yeah. Well, you're part of the... I feel like this season has been a lot of what I'd call a royalty, the dynasty of...
Do you mean old people?
She was dancing around it so great.
She was, wasn't she?
No, because Josie...
She was doing little Zimmer frame actions as well as she was saying it, dear listener.
And grinding my teeth, put my chin up. Because we've had Gary Wilmot, we've had Mike McShane, and we've got you, Josie Lawrence.
You got me.
That's, to me, that's the Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity of influential people in Pippa's life.
Yeah.
People I can direct message. Yes. So, Josie, where could we start with you? I don't know. We could probably start anywhere, couldn't we? I always think this is interesting about you, Josie.
Go on.
This is what I think is interesting, is that you don't use the word improviser first or comedian, but as in you're an actress who does improvisation.
Yeah. Yes, and I'll tell you for why.
Please do.
It goes back to the history of me, I suppose, because when I went to Dartington College of Arts, it was a 4-year degree course. I sort of wanted to go to RADA, and my mum and dad thought, oh dear, London, that might be a bit too much. And my cousin said there's this place called Dartington College of Arts in Devon. And I remember going there. It was the only place I went to sort of try out for. And it had an open-air swimming pool, and I thought, oh, I'd like to come here. So that was why. But what Dartington did do, I sort of grew up there, really, which included losing my virginity, which was great. But I sort of grew up there and loved it. And we used a lot of improvisation, and we had some amazing people like Bill Gaskell, who's director at the Royal Court, did mask work with us. We had Richard Eyre, who has been the director of the National Theatre, is a wonderful director. He came and did improv with us. But a lot of the improvisation was a kind of means to an end. So it was divisory, and I read all the books. I found out about Viola Spolin and Keith Johnston, and my favourite was, Something Wonderful Right Away about the Second City and the Compass. I read all those books, but it was more devisory. So we do status games a lot and things like that, but I never, back then, which is 1977, 78, thought of improvisation as a genre in its own right, which luckily it is today. That's how old I am. It was something I loved, but it was only until I saw it on the alternative cabaret circuit that I thought, this is good. But even then I was a singer. I wasn't an improviser. I was an actress, like serious actress, doing the rounds and all that, the reps that they had at the time. And there was a play by lovely Pam Gems called Passionaria, which is about the Spanish Civil War. And Denise Black played Passionaria, and there was myself and Kate and a whole ensemble playing lots of different parts. Denise Black and her husband at the time, Paul Sand, were already doing the alternative circuit as a singer and musician. He wrote songs for her, amazing songs that were about everything and anything, just these incredible songs. And we started to harmonise with her one day, Kate and I, and we became Denise Black and the Cray Sisters, and that is how I was introduced to the alternative comedy circuit. It was never as a stand-up, which a lot of people think. It was as a singer. And in those days, you'd get the comedy acts, and then we would end the night singing songs about, the Berlin Wall coming down, a young child in a house fire, a woman who spends all day enjoying sexual toys. It was called Curious Toys. And, so we'd jump around, and we had little vintage dresses on and bother boots. We were quite,
sexy,
quite powerful. And it was then I got to know the likes of Jim Sweeney and Steve Steen, who were doing the Rupert Pupkin Collective. And it was whilst I was doing something very serious at the Donmar with Peter Capaldi, funnily enough, young Peter Capaldi, called Songs for Stray Cats and Other Living Creatures, that I stayed behind and watched the late night improv that was happening. And it was Fishbowl, and they hadn't got many girls, and they said, join us. And I remember joining in that night, feeling nervous but really excited nerves, and just throwing myself on and thinking, oh my God, this is wonderful. And then I was directing, we had to leave the Cray Sisters, Kate and I, because it got in the way of our acting, because you have to book gigs in advance, more and more acting jobs was coming up. But I did direct the new Denise Black and the new Cray Sisters in a show that went to Edinburgh, and the Comedy Store Players were up there, and Paul Merton had a cold. And they said, it was when Mike Myers was still there.
Wow.
And they said, Paul Merton's got a cold, come and join us. And I did. I remember doing emo with Mike Myers. And I remember at one point somebody shouting out paranoia, and there were chairs on stage. And I remember building a nest of chairs and getting inside it. That's the only thing I can remember. But I remember Mike saying, fine debut, fine debut. So that was it. And then eventually I became a permanent member. So it was at a time where there was very little improvisation going on. We were lucky in a way. And of course the Comedy Store, even now, even 37 years later, Lee managed to do a gig a couple of weeks ago, and he's back, thank the Lord, on Sunday, because he's one of the best improvisers in the world, Lee Simpson. When he came back after 2 years away, he said there is nothing like it. It's and a lot of it has to do with the space. It's just special. It's my home, and they're my family now, really. That's how it started. And then, of course, the producers of a thing called Whose Line came to see us.
And then you became a household name. And I was just Googling you, as I always love to do.
I must change my Wikipedia. There's so many things that aren't right in Wikipedia.
Especially the name of your cats, I believe, are quite old names of your cats.
Enoch and Eli, they died ages ago.
That's the first thing I noticed. I was like, well, that's not correct. But what I noticed was you saying that you said that your agent struggled to get you out of Comedy Land after Whose Line, despite the fact that actually Whose Line you only recorded over weekends?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Dan and Mark came to see us, and we also, I remember with Paul Merton auditioning at the Donmar, and it was very much like, Fame or something, people would do a few games and then they'd be sent home until there were just a few of us left. There were 2 pilots, and I did both of them. And the first pilot, I remember we sat on very tall chairs instead of comfy seats. And I remember I wore a dress, which I never did again, because there was something strange about wearing a dress. I like to pretend I can be every man, every woman, and so I never wore a dress again. But I do remember it had a great bar, because it was Canary Wharf, it was, and the bar was a ship. It was 10 o'clock, I think, on Friday nights, Channel 4, and we really didn't think, many people would watch. There was the marvellous John Sessions was a regular in the first series, and some amazing people. And then suddenly I remember I had a little old yellow Golf, and I was at a junction near Stepney Green on the Saturday after it had been out for a couple of Fridays, and somebody went, "Oh, Josie Lawrence," in the other car. And then there was this marvellous review in Time Out saying Josie Lawrence for Prime Minister. And I was so happy. I think I was at Aldgate East tube station when I was reading it on the tube, and I got off the tube to find a phone box so I could phone my mum and dad for some money and say, "Oh, you never guess what they've said about me." And it was great, It was amazing how, because I'd done a little character on Friday Night Live called Florence from Cradley, which was a character piece. I think because of that and Whose Line, a lot of people were phoning up my agent saying, "Can we book her to do her stand-up?" And there was no stand-up. So I had to make very definite decisions after that to do things like 2 years with the Royal Shakespeare Company. And I did a television thing that was lovely with Tim Spall called Outside Edge in the early part of the 90s up until 94. Well, 95 really. Then I just did a whole decade of theatre, because that's what I consider myself to be. I consider myself to be an actress or actor who loves to improvise with her mates on a Sunday night. That's how I always thought of myself. But it was a decade. It was, Royal Shakespeare Company doing Kate, and then Beatrice at the Royal Exchange. And then I did do a comedy with Michael Frayn in the West End. And then the King and I in 2001 for like a year. I did the premiere of Bryony Lavery's Frozen at the National. So really going from dark to light all the time, which I love. But after a decade, you think, right, I'll do a bit more telly now. And it's sort of, hello, remember me? Do you know what I mean? But the constant in my life has been the comedy store players.
Because I remember seeing your poster down the tube for The King and I.
The King, that
and
dress.
That dress. But I remember thinking, Josie Lawrence is amazing, and now she's doing The King and I. And what was that like? Well, first of all, because didn't you take over from Her Royal Highness, Elaine Page?
Well, I think I'd been partying the night before. And I was in bed and my phone went, in my little dial phone by my bed. So I was phoned by Lawrence from Nymax, Nika's lovely second-in-command. And he knew us because Nika had been so helpful in organising the Comedy Store Players Tour in the early 90s, and she was always so supportive of us. I just love Nika. I think we all do.
Yeah, incredibly supportive of Showstopper as well. Big shout out to
she's
amazing Nika.
Big fan,
we love you, Nika.
Nika, if you're listening, we love you.
And he said, "Would you like to take over from Elaine Page in The King and I at the London Palladium?" And I was still in bed. I said, "Can I call you back?" And I put the phone down and went to sleep. And then I woke up again and thought, I've had the most amazing dream. And then I realised, and I thought, I can't sing like Elaine Page, which I can't. And they said, "Look, Jose, it was originally written for Gertrude Lawrence, who did consider herself to be an actor rather than a singer, and it's what you do with it." So I went and sang, and to the best of my ability, and did 9 months and just adored it. I remember, though, on the first preview, never being as nervous about anything. Perhaps the first Friday Night Live, because it was live telly. I went on stage and, whenever I feel afraid, that. And I went, whenever I feel afraid. And it was like I'd been eating wafers. There was no spittle in my mouth at all. There was just nothing. And I remember thinking, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can do this. It was so... But a wonderful company. My only sadness was I'd come from Frozen at the National, which is about child murder and very, very dark, very powerful play.
Not the Disney show.
Not the Disney show. And my only sadness was, on a more serious note, that Frozen was the last thing that my dad saw, and he was very ill at the time. He loved it, said it was very powerful, but I would have loved him to have seen me in that dress at the Palladium. So in the programme, it was dedicated to him. But yeah, no matter what happens, I still go back to do the store. And in my head, I've always wanted it to be a kind of thing that sort of self-generates itself. Obviously, COVID knocked us for a while, and the audiences are still building up, and we don't do the Wednesday shows anymore, only the Sundays, so you don't know. But in my dreams, it gets self-generated by the younger people like you lot and Ruth and all the guests that we get. I'd love it to be a kind of second city then when it just regenerates.
New people come
and
on,
I don't know if that would happen, but it's always we have some amazing guests, and it's always such a fun night. I went through a little patch where I think people poo-pooed it a bit, along with Whose Line, because, it's those short, silly games. And there were some people, I think, who were a little bit poo-poo, but I understand that. Things have to grow and change and develop. And it was you and Ruth and Cariad who introduced me to the other side. I'd already seen Showstoppers and adored you, and I'd seen Ostentatious. And I remember going to Hoopla with you, and people were talking about things like long form. Is it long form? Oh, have you done Harold? Oh, do ASCAT? And I thought, what the bloody hell are they talking about?
Another language.
It was another language, but it was this whole new world that opened up to me through meeting you. And I love the fact now that it is its own art form now.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something ultra special about improvising, and that feeling, I liken it to surfing a wave, really. Though I've never surfed in my life. But, just when you're in a good space with an improvisation, you're on that wave and you're staying upright. Do you know what I mean? But there's another person or three people on the surfboard with you enjoying it at the same time. It's the best feeling in the world, doing a great piece of improv or singing a wonderful song. And I remember Ken Campbell.
Yes.
Your lovely Ken. Jose phoned me up out. Jose, I'd like to take you out for lunch. And he took me to lunch in a nearby restaurant near me, and he showed me this great big book he'd got of these caves in the Italian Alps that he'd just been to. Look at that, isn't that marvellous? And then he said, you've got to come to the Hen and Chickens, I think it was, to see the Showstoppers.
That's right,
and
you were there.
The first time I saw you, and you were amazing. And then he went, I've got to go, bye. And so left me there.
Yes, but then you came up to me after, and you said, well done.
Hello, yes.
And I was like, oh my God, Josie Lawrence.
And then I got shy, and I think I went outside and had a fag with an old guy.
Well, I imagine just what you found. Meant a huge deal to us because we often have talked about like how did we get into improv, and one of the ways was that song that you did with Mike McShane.
The Paperweight
one. The Paperweight song,
the
that's
Paperweight.
Right. I've talked about it probably 17 times on this podcast.
You sang it to us when me and Mike were in the dressing room.
Right.
It was a very surreal, beautiful experience because Mike and I couldn't remember it. So Mike and I held hands while this young buck sort of sang this beautiful rendition of our
because
silly
we
song
had it
to
on
us.
A cassette in the car from the front of a magazine, so I knew it offhand.
Because I remember the first song styles Richard and I did at the store. I think Ronnie Golden had done like a blues thing, and I said to Richard, do you fancy sort of trying to sing and improvise? And that night, I remember going up on stage and asking for it. It was an angle poise lamp. And it wasn't song styles. We just did a blues. And then we thought, should we add some more? And I think that's probably more than anything what got me noticed with Dan and Mark.
Sure.
But I mean, those Whose Lines, we would film 2 shows a day. And so you might be called, and we'd work on Saturdays and Sundays. So if you did like 6 out of the 8 that were recorded, you'd basically worked like a couple of weekends. And then the rest of the year, you'd be doing other things. But of course, it was then on every Friday, and then they'd be compilation shows and that.
And did they do the trick, which they did? So when Ruth and I were in Fast and Loose, the follow-up show, we would wear the same outfits quite a lot of the time, so that they could edit the show together.
No, we had different outfits. More or less, the show that we did would be the show with a few games not in that would go in the compilation, because I had some cracking outfits.
Yeah.
All those waistcoats. And
yes,
some
that I now have.
Yeah,
Iconic.
I gave them to...
that's right.
I gave them to Pippa.
Literally
that
can't.
Italian grey trousers. I bet you can't get into that.
I'm just because I'm pregnant right now. That guy's not because
That wasn't just a
Josie
random
wasn't being
comment.
It's not me being bitchy. You can't wear it now because you're fat.
I genuinely look at them and go, I can't wait to put those back on.
My favourite, I think, was a man's suit. I just went into the costume place one day and they had like the blokes and then stuff for the girls. And I said, oh, can I try that black suit on? And it was a man's suit and I wore a white shirt and a tie and I loved it. But the thing about Whose Line was, I suppose, that is very different from the sort of stuff I've started to do now, is that... it had to be kind of gag-ridden and immediate because, like, film and theatre would last a minute or two. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was so ba-bum-bum. And it was more like Party Game Central, which is why I think a lot of people that didn't know about improv enjoyed it, because it was like a sort of silly people being silly.
Gag,
it was
gag,
people
gag,
being
gag,
silly. I did the American version as well, which is even more fast-paced.
Yeah.
And it was very, very, very good for me. I loved Whose Line. But it's one of these things where, you know, people remember me from it. It's so long ago now that I do get, you know, hadn't you used to be Josie Lawrence? You know what I mean? And you think, no, I still do it at the store, you know. Come see the Comedy Store players. But no, it was delightful. Yes, there was that thing about people not seeing me as the actor I like to think I am, but other than that, it was so good for me, you know.
It will have allowed you to do a lot of, because of that,
I would
having
never
that
have
extra,
been
having
asked
that
to
credit.
have done King and I or any of those things.
So it
was
such a
so
gift.
good for me. Oh yes, I'm not complaining about Whose Line at all. And we still occasionally do it. The last time we did it, the American lads and lassies came over, and me and Clive did it with them at the Royal Albert Hall for 3 shows.
Yes.
Oh,
And
of course,
it was like being a rock star. And they were so nice. My brother and sister came to see 2 shows, and the second show, when they realised that my brother and sister are in, they got them a box, and there was a bottle of champagne in the box, and that, and our John apparently said to me, sister, I've never been so proud, you know, because it was amazing. So yeah, and then of course Glenda J.
Glenda J.
This is the Glenda J Collective that Pippa and Josie and Ruth and Carriette.
Yes.
That's the full
Carriette,
squad.
yeah, and lovely Duncan.
And Duncan on the keys. How would you define it as a show?
We just wanted to do an improv show where we just got on stage and something happened.
Yeah. and to be girlies together as well,
Yeah.
you know, which over the years hasn't happened very much.
Because when we first started guesting with the Comedy Store players, it was always maybe one of us.
Yeah.
Either because Josie's not available, or Josie's on and we have one and there's an
Yeah.
extra lady.
So we wanted more lady action.
So we're like, well, let's find a show where we can all be together on stage. You came up with the opening, didn't you? With the little song. So we do this little song where we get a code word
Charlie
from the
Angel.
audience.
Yeah.
Sort of Charlie said, we get a code word from the audience, and then that inspires the rest of the show, and that's it. And in fact, we just did a show at the 21 Soho, and again, lots of people came who had maybe seen Showstopper or had seen Comedy Store Players / Whose Lines anyway, and they really couldn't believe that's all we did. That we just got, and we didn't have a beginning where we said, "Has anyone seen improv before?"
We just come on and
just do it.
And it was Jim Sweeney. My hero is Glenda Jackson. My cat's called Glenda Jackson. We thought Glenda J, didn't we? It was Jim Sweeney that added the collective.
That's right, yeah.
bit, and it became the Glenda J collective, and sometimes even the Glenda J's or the Glendas. I'd love to do it more, but I think the fact that we don't do it very much is what makes it rare and special, really.
So we do sort of sketches and songs, and then occasionally. So imagine how occasional the show already is.
Yeah.
That even more occasionally, if there's a second half, I think we've only done this twice. We
do the Book of Glenda.
The Book of Glenda, which is where the audience gives us like the first line of chapters from a book.
Oh, nice.
And that went very dark one time.
Yeah, but I like the dark. That's why the culmination of everything for me has been recently with Improbable, the musical, because I think it's the first time I've been able, well, apart from the Book of Glenda, the first time I've been able to be in a theatre setting and go into those darker places.
Yeah.
You know, I like that. I like sort of turning on a sixpence. And, well, I like that when I act as well. I like, you know, with Mother Courage or anything like that, I like to be able to make them laugh 1 minute and then go, you know, the next. It's nice to get the chance to do that. So yes, that's been quite liberating, working with Improbable.
Yeah, and again, just to throw some context in here, this is the Improbable musical that ran, was it a couple of months ago now?
Yes, in Northampton. And we're hopefully doing the tour of it and bringing it to London. I remember we did a week's workshop ages ago, and then we rehearsed for 5 weeks, and I can remember as we sat in our circle, we sit in a circle and pass an imaginary stick around, and then you can talk. Because it's improbable and I love it.
And this is Lee Simpson and Phelan McDermott.
Yes,
company.
the wonderful Lee Simpson and Phelan. He said we rehearsed for 5 weeks to me on the phone, and I went, 5 weeks for an improvised show? And of course it did take 5 weeks, because we worked with wonderful puppeteers, we worked with actors who hadn't necessarily improvised before. We were trying out new things, you know, and it was like, you know, we'd have choreography and movement one day and then puppetry the next and envisioning the space the next. You know, it was like being back at drama school again, but in a fantastic way and really, really liberating. Not that doing comedy all the time is constraining. I don't mean that. It just, I was able to put the theatre work and the improv work together, which was lovely.
And I thought that show had such a good sense of its own identity in a way. There's something about the space you allowed each other as performers, and the beautiful sound design that Chris Dash was responsible for.
Oh, he's fantastic.
Just beautiful stuff. But I really thought it found its own voice.
Yes.
And there was no pressure to be one thing or the other.
No, and I think, because we did 10 shows in the 9 days that we were on, but it was only towards the end that I felt that personally, this is it now. And because Lee was always talking about, I want to sort of sing the bare bones of it. He said it doesn't matter if it fails as long as it's a magnificent failure.
Yeah.
And I as an improviser, am the opposite of that. My feeling is to cover up things. But he was very much, you know, if somebody's doing one thing and somebody decides to do another, comment on it, or you know what I mean, or and so that was new for me, but very enjoyable. I feel I'm being too serious.
No, that's okay, because we also like this podcast to turn on a sixpence, and so we like to make them laugh 1 second and then cry another. So it's
much like Josie Lawrence's masterful performance in Bertolt Brecht's Mother Courage and Her Children.
I thought you were going to say much like Josie Lawrence's relationships with men.
No.
Josie, I love you.
Here's a tangent I want to pick up. Josie, this is a question for Pippa. Josie said her most nervous moment was opening night of King and I. When have you been the most nervous before going on stage?
Oh my gosh. 2 things pop in my head. The first one is when I did Live at the Palladium.
Wow.
So we're both at the Palladium.
Oh, it's the Palladium. Look at that connection.
Thinking about being at the Palladium makes one so nervous.
So I was on this bill with Bananarama and Barry Manilow. And then me. And it was being filmed for ITV, and it was a really big deal, and Bradley Walsh was hosting. And I just remember standing in the wings. How big is that space? 1,000 and something, something bonkers.
Yeah.
So yes, I was in the wings, and Bradley Walsh was like, "Oh, she's a dear friend of mine." And all I remember thinking was, show business is such a load of because they have to, of course. It wouldn't work if he said, I
don't know this
I've never heard of her, but the researchers promised me she's pretty good. And then I went out and did 20 minutes of songs and stand up for Live at the Palladium. So that was pretty terrifying. Andrew, what's the most nervous you've ever been?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Private party corporate setup.
Oh.
It turned out in the room were a lot of top TV executives, shall we say. In the room also Simon Cowell, Amanda Holden, and all those kind of people. And I remember us sort of peeking through the door, just about to go in. It's like a really tiny room as well, a little like after dinner
right.
For, I think it was someone's retirement do or something. For some reason we all had like quite new smartwatches on.
Yeah.
And we were all like checking our heartbeats on our watches. And we were like, we're all having heart attacks.
I would put that up there as well. That was, oh my gosh, it was so terrifying. And then we did we were so lucky, weren't we? Because we do a corporate thing, it's about somebody, so we'll say, what would you have been if you weren't what you were? And the person we were singing about said, I would have liked to have been Tony in West Side Story.
Yeah.
I mean, what a gift. So then we just did this musical about how this guy goes to Broadway and becomes Tony, and it was just really fun.
When you get certain things, you just think, whoa.
Yeah.
My favourite one was dodecahedron at Regent's Park when I asked for an unusual object. Somebody shouted out dodecahedron, and I didn't at the time know what it was. And somebody said, it's a 12-sided object. And I went, right, okay. And can I have a song style, please? And somebody said gospel. And I thought, thank you, Jesus. A 12-sided object. And I'm singing, and it was all about, his disciples were pleading, saying, we just want to be part of your holy dodecahedron. So, and you think, just as you start, you think, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning that with Whose Line in particular, you would film on the day that you met. There were no sort of going in and rehearsing. There'd be a camera rehearsal in the afternoon. So you knew, a bit like Fast and Loose, I imagine, you knew where to look. You'd be told, okay, Ryan, you're going to do film and theatre with Josie. And, you'd know those things. But nothing else. But we didn't meet people, especially the Americans, until that afternoon. And so the first time I met Mike was the afternoon before I duetted with him. And I remember at LWT, especially, one thing I remember was there was this, the two studios, 1 and 2, and then this sort of green room coffee shop area. And what we all did was a lot of pacing. I don't know about you, but there's a lot of pacing goes on. Whether I'm doing a play or improv, I love a bit of a pace. And I was pacing, and there was this bloke in a suit pacing as well, who I hadn't seen at the camera rehearsal, but sometimes, you did it in stages. And he said, hi, I'm John. I said, I'm Josie. I said, are you nervous? He said, I'm so nervous. I said, well, don't be. It'll all be fine. He said, yeah. I said, and Clive makes it easy for us as well. And he went, Clive? Not Scylla. And he was in Studio 1, we had blind date, and he'd just gone to the wrong green room and was a blind date contestant who I would have loved to have seen do Whose Line. It was so lovely. Clive, not Scylla. So that's how extreme it was. You just didn't meet them until you were working with them.
Well, would you like to sing a song with us?
Yeah, oh, there he is. He crept in quietly.
That's right. Duncan Walsh Atkins is in the house. I
can do it. I haven't had a warm-up or anything.
Let's do it.
Let's sing a song.
Perhaps more sort of Sondheim-y, about what?
Fear.
A Sondheim number about fear.
It's like my heart won't stop beating.
My heart too.
I got such a dry mouth,
A dry mouth, me too. And my shoulders are around my ears.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like I could fall over. I feel like my breath stuck in my throat.
I feel like there's not enough air in this room. I feel like I'm gonna choke.
Oh, me too. You know, and also I feel like I should stay or leave. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I feel like when I suck in, I just can't breathe. I don't know whether to be there or whether to be here. 'Cause I've got the fear.
I got the fear.
I've got the fear.
Oh, God.
Sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I don't know what I'm gonna do. If I should even open my eyes and set my eyes on you.
And I'm there under the duvet, and I just can't throw it away. And I just want to stay up, cuddled and snuggled and warm for the entire day.
And you don't know whether to be there, and you don't know whether to be here. It's called the fear. But there's something that can help. Let me tell you, you see,
I'm writing it down.
the only thing that can help to stop this isn't you, it's me. If you just try and breathe and think it'll be okay, soon it will become clear. And you'll be able to say bye-bye, maybe, to the fear. The fear. The fear.
That was Josie Lawrence.
What a legend. It was a really nice bit, wasn't there, Andrew, where Josie and I shared our memories of playing the London Palladium. Like old starlets.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you said you never played at the London Palladium. And then we all sat awkwardly, I believe.
Yeah, that was good.
It was a really nice moment.
That was another episode of the Showstopper podcast.
Yes, it was. And Andrew, we've left this news to the end because we didn't want to upset anyone, but it's probably my last episode for a while.
For a little while.
Yeah, because the human who's on me demands a lot of attention.
Yes, yeah.
And so I'm on Showstopper maternity leave. So I won't be...
Oh, baby.
Yes, I'm on Showstopper maternity leave.
I love the fact that that wasn't your baby at all. That was just you pressing play on the BBC sound effects thing to underline your maternity leave point.
It really did sound like a recording of how a baby sounds like when she cries.
Yeah.
She might cry again, but let's see what happens. So yeah, so I'll be off for a bit.
But listeners might hear you in these little wraparound chats.
Yeah, these wraparound. Well, yeah, they might. We'll see what happens, guys.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it's been a joy. And looking forward to coming back when this child is old enough to understand Mummy needs to work.
Oh God, I think you should lower the bar a bit there. Pip.
Okay, is just sick less.
Yeah, great.
Is that a good one?
Certainly, my child does not understand that Daddy needs to go to work.
Well, do you know what? I think this was one of our really good episodes.
I think so. I'm going to put it in the top 11 of season 3.
Yeah, 100%. I'm going to like it and I'm going to give it a rating of 5 stars.
Also, it's going to make me follow Showstopper the Improvised Musical on all of the socials. On
Like Twitter.
Yeah, at the Showstoppers.
And Facebook.
/ the Showstoppers.
And the Instagram.
Showstopper Musical.
And the TikTok.
Showstopper Musical.
And MySpace.
Showstopper is back in 1995.com. And our website, showstopperthemusical.com.
You could just go there and look at old episodes of the podcast if you wanted.
Yeah, you could actually.
And also you can see where we're touring next.
Yes, absolutely, because by the time you hear this, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival is a distant memory, even though Pippa is still living in the middle of the festival.
That's right, I'm still here in the bubble, trying to deal with the rubbish strike.
So we're out on tour. We're at Theatre Roy Barris in Edmonds on the 8th and 9th of September. We're going on to the Capitol Theatre Horsham on the...
Just look at the website. That's the best bet. Our memories for dates right now aren't great. So best bet, go to that showstopperthemusical.com and find out if we're playing near you very soon.
Great. Baby's sleeping.
The baby's sleeping. Maybe it's time we say goodbye.
Maybe it's time to do a weird monster voice.
A really terrifying voice that will influence her and her dreams for the rest of her life. Okay.